Hello and welcome back. I would do a live today, but I'm currently wearing a face mask and even I have my limits. But yeah, it's a Friday night here in Salzburg. And before we get into anything, I want to address the name because maybe you have noticed that it's no longer called the Millennial Manual as in the first episode. I actually spoke to a lot of people about the podcast, what I want to do, and actually I feel like it's a crisis, not in the way life or death crisis, but it's still a crisis that we're in. And you know how mainstream media works. Negative headlines just attract more. So, new name, same chaos. Let's dive right in. Today I'm going to talk about heartbreak, and truly I didn't think that I would already be talking about that in the second episode. But I sold my car today, and in a second you'll know why this is relevant. On paper is a very practical, adult thing to do. I don't really need my car because I live in the city. I can use public transportation. Parking is just too freaking expensive, and also with the current fuel prices, I don't think I have to go on, right? So the money comes, he picks up the car. It should have been a simple procedure. I'm not a very materialistic person, not at all actually. And so I didn't expect that I would have feelings about selling my car. But I've been with that car for the last 4 years, and let me tell you, it brought me to really wonderful places. I actually love the feeling of driving. I always have. I think it's because it makes me feel really independent. And also, of course, I took a lot of trips with my ex in my car. So it was like a whole chapter that I was saying goodbye to, because we would argue in the car, we would show each other songs in the car, but we did not share the same music taste. There were just, long drives, and he was right beside me in the passenger seat. Yes, you heard that right. I didn't want to be driven around, but that's mostly because I get car sick easily, so he was a passenger prince. But I also didn't mind that really. This all kind of triggered feelings today for me, and honestly, this is what grief does. It just hides in the most unexpected and then jumps out at you when you're least prepared. Like, you think you're fine, and then suddenly you're not anymore. You wave goodbye to your car and something doesn't feel right anymore. I teared up a little bit, and the guy looked at me as if I was a little bit crazy or losing it, but in this moment maybe I was. Obviously, you have realized that I went through a breakup, and I'm 28, so it's weird because I'm now in my late 20s, and it's just very different than when I was 22, because back then it was like my world stopped. It was something really catastrophic even. And now there is just a different sentiment, I think. It's a very specific, because in my head I had built up a vision of us in the future, and this is no longer. So I'm not just losing a person that I know, but I'm also losing that hypothetical life that I would have built up with. And that's really the part that takes a long time to let go of. Here's what I actually think about relationships in your 20s, and I'm currently not only processing that car sale, but also I'm still getting over my last relationship. I think in your 20s you figure out who you are. Something that is obvious, and I'm sorry if it sounds cliche, but it's really true. This is what makes relationships complicated, because you're trying to build something with another person while you're still trying to figure out your own life, your own self, what you need. And this is such a defining decade, right? I mean, this is why I'm doing this podcast. There's a lot of shifts happening. And I think also things you're willing to compromise on shift. Like, I know which kinds of behaviors I can no longer tolerate at all. And sometimes it feels like the person that you maybe were with when you were 23 was perfect for the version of you that time. But now this person is just someone that you've outgrown. And that's not failure, this is just life. But it's less about finding the right person and more about learning what the right person even looks like for you. And this is what I take from this relationship. Sometimes it's really the painful people in our lives, the ones that end badly, or the ones that also show you your own patterns and your own blind spots, that are probably the most important ones, also when they hurt the most. That's what I'm telling myself, but feel free to check back with me in 6 months' time, and then we'll see if I have actually made a progress there. We also live together, so now I have a lot more physical space, which is also kind of nice, but this apartment now is way too big for me. But also mental space, I will say, being in a relationship, I think it always takes up part of your mental space, because all of a sudden you have to manage 2 calendars, 2 families, and so on and so forth. In the spirit of that, I took a walk today and I listened to a podcast actually to find out how to deal with a breakup. Here's what I've learned. It's a podcast, Teach Me How to Adult, by the way. I mentioned this already in the first episode, and they gave some useful tips. What they suggested, and what I think is so true, and which is something that our parents didn't have to deal with, is social media. We all know it. It's a love, it's a curse, it's a love-hate relationship. But really just try not to stalk them. It's not healthy. You can decide to unfollow them, which is what I did, for example. You can still follow them, but just don't look it up all the time. You just interpret so much into what they post, and we all know that that is not even real most of the time. If they look happy, you will question this. If they look sad, you will question it, maybe even more so. If they don't post anything, you will try to analyze that silence. So just don't do it, really. Maybe just look at cat videos or cool recipes or gym hacks or your next travel destination, but not your ex. Number 2, rewrite the story. We all have been there before. Once the relationship is over, we think of all of the trips you took together, the inside jokes, just the version that was there for you always. So only the best moments, right? And this is actually not true, because there were also bad sides, the moments, and you have to balance it out. Try writing down what didn't work, why you could not have stayed with that person. And this is not to be cruel or not to villainize anyone, but rather to remind yourself that the relationship that you're grieving wasn't perfect, and that it ended for a reason, and that those reasons were real. This doesn't mean that the beautiful moments weren't real. They can both exist, but it's important to get the full picture. And I have a list, and I look at it when the nostalgia gets really loud, and this usually helps me a lot. My third tip is to move your body until your brain shuts up. And this is actually one that I've used in literally all life circumstances when it got tough, because movement has always helped me cope with everything. It's just when you're busy sweating, the mental noise goes away, and you can choose whatever. You can run, you can dance, you can do yoga. As a yoga teacher, I would tell you to do yoga, but essentially anything where your memories stop playing on a loop. It helps. Try it out. Next tip would be to let yourself feel the emotions, because I think without that part you will never be able to move on. But I'm a real planner, so naturally I have to schedule my breakdowns, in the sense that I give myself a window that is big enough to feel sad, to cry, to maybe scream, to journal, to look at old photos, whatever I need to do. But then after that part of sadness is done, it has to be done. And then I go back to a routine, to a life, to get back into that state where my brain actually allows for dopamines to be released. Grief will not disappear just because you ignore it, but you also need to put a stop to it once you've had the chance to feel your feelings. And the last tip that I actually learned today, this was in the podcast, to learn something new. And in the podcast, they named playing the guitar. And this I can't do because my ex was super into playing the guitar, but I decided that doing a podcast will be my new thing. So here we are. You are listening to my learning project. And lastly, in today's episode, I will talk about the date that I went on this week. And it was a special one because it was the first official one since the breakup, which, as you might imagine, feels significant in the way that first things always feel after a relationship that ended. It's like crossing some invisible line or stepping into a version of yourself that you haven't been in a while. And well, I'm happy to report that it was wonderful and romantic, and I came home floating. This is a lie, obviously. No, I don't want to be sarcastic like that. It was fine. He was really nice. The place was fine. The conversations were fine. But fine is just really, like, it's such an unsatisfying word. Going on a first date after a long relationship is a very strange experience because you just realize how much you had forgotten about dating altogether, about the weird small talk, trying to perform a little bit maybe, then also the mental gymnastics of trying to seem interested without seeming desperate, and also coming across as confident but not being arrogant, and relaxed but also seeming like you don't care. So it's a balance on all fronts, basically. So after 2 hours, I said goodnight and went home, took my shoes off, sat on the couch, and just, sat in silence and just let it all wash over me that I survived my first official date after the breakup. So that's this week. Heartbreak, a card that apparently meant a lot more to me than I realized, a fine date, a name change, and spending my Friday evening alone in my apartment with tea and a face mask, recording my second podcast episode instead of being at the club. Well, if you've been through a recent breakup or if you're in one now, I hope something in this was useful, maybe made you smile or feel slightly less alone in all of this chaos. I know it's crazy, I know it sometimes feels never ending, but you're not alone. Wherever you're listening, follow so you don't miss the next episode, and if you want to send me your list of reasons it didn't work out, my DMs are open. We can even compare notes. I'm Selena and I have to go because my face mask is literally coming off as I'm speaking.